Good afternoon, everyone. It's always nice to see, there's a couple of people here that don't have a uniform on.
What?
So hi. Today is March 26th, 2024. It's 1 p.m. This is a Prescott City Council study session. Roll call, please.
Mayor Good.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Here.
Councilwoman Fruworth.
Here.
Councilman Gambogi.
Yo.
Councilman Montoya.
I'm here.
Councilman Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
All are present.
Very good. We have a discussion agenda today, department overview of the Prescott Police and Fire Departments, including areas of responsibility, budget overview, goals and objectives, and accomplishments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wanted to introduce this item a little bit for you. So we obviously have an impressive team before us that's going to present a lot of good information. We've reviewed it. It's so much information that we kindly ask that you hold questions, which I know is not typical, but we have so much to get through in about an hour and a half, and then we like to hold the last half hour for direction, questions, comments, and feedback from council. So with that, we'll first kick it off with Chief Bonnie.
Where do I aim this? Okay.
Oh, go back.
Oh, no. Stand by. All right. Told to speak into the mic. Thank you so much for having us today. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, especially with the team that we have sitting around us to present a little bit about our operations in our public safety areas. So here we go. 5 minutes apiece. We'll see if we can stick to that. So what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit about structure and budget, our strategic goals, an overview of our department, the innovations that we have made in the past several years in regards to policing, our accomplishments, and then of course leave some time for questions. All right, so what you see in front of you is our command staff, and Dr. DeLong is not able to join us today, but we do have our regional communications manager, Rob Martin, with us to talk about Prescott Regional Communications Center. And so this is the team that we have leading our police department right here and who you're gonna hear from this afternoon. Very briefly, our overview. So in addition to the police department, you may know that Prescott Regional Communications Center is part of our police department and is part of our organizational structure. But we're broken down into bureaus, as you're going to hear from today: Patrol, Special Operations, Support Ops, our Regional Communications Center, and then our accreditation. Our mission is to provide the highest level of service in a collaborative effort with our community to protect life, property, and the rights of all people. And part of the collaboration that you're going to hear about today is a collaboration that we have with our partners at the fire department as well as our community. Our vision is to be a leader in our region by working with our community members in order to provide superior public safety services. And our values there that we focus on every day are integrity, courage, accountability, respect, and excellence. I want to just very briefly touch on our accreditation status because it's a really important part of what we do. We received full accreditation status through the Arizona Law Enforcement Accreditation Program through the Arizona Association of Chiefs of Police in July of 2021 and maintain our accreditation status. We have a full accreditation review coming up in the next 2 years. I also want to focus on the fact that we are working through an accreditation for our Regional Communications Center as well as our Property and Evidence section within our police department. It's important for a lot of reasons, not only improving our officer safety, but also reducing our exposure and risk and ensuring that we're meeting better than industry standards through best practice and validated standards. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Brambilla to review our budget and personnel.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for having us today. John Brambilla, Deputy Chief at the Police Department. Next couple of slides that I have are pretty self-explanatory, but what we have here is our fiscal year budget for this fiscal year. As you can see, our total budget is about $20 million, with about 2.5 of that in capital. Most of that capital is police vehicles, both replacement and new purchases. Those really have skyrocketed over the last few years as far as the cost of the equipment that goes into them, as well as the vehicles themselves. And then as you can see, the majority of our budget does go to personnel, right? That is the majority of what our budget is for the people. Without people, our programs don't work. We don't have people out on the street taking calls for service. We don't have detectives doing follow-up. So the majority of that budget is our people. Currently, our budgeted sworn personnel, you see the allocations there, 87 total sworn. At the time of this presentation, our current personnel were at 75 sworn. Total civilian staff, which is mostly our records staff, as well as some other areas within the police department. You can see that that's 18.5 budgeted positions, and all of those are currently filled. So our strategic goals, we embarked on a strategic plan probably around 2008 is when we first implemented a strategic plan. And ever since that time, we have revisited it every year, and we made a major change to it just a few years ago so that we could align our goals with the council goals at the time. So now that there are new council goals, we will embark on that new strategic plan as well so that we can make sure that our goals match the council goals. But currently, this is what our strategic plan is, and I believe you guys have a copy of this in the packet. But the number one goal we have is safe community. I think that makes a lot of sense for the police department to have that as our number one goal. Under that goal, we have a couple of different objectives. The first is that we do analyze our crime trends. We use our computer-aided dispatching, our records management system, and a few other programs to really look at the areas of the city where we see most of our calls for service. We look at times and days, and then we try to align our schedules so that we're implementing the people in the right places. So really, using that data to drive where our people are and how they're doing the job so that we can have a positive impact on crime in the community and making sure that we keep the community safe. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of the strategies under each goal because there's quite a few objectives under several of the goals. But our goal number 2, organizational excellence. Probably the most important objective there is maintaining appropriate staffing levels. We have set minimum staffing levels for every one of our teams. That includes patrol, community services, our traffic safety, and our investigations team. So we have a number of officers and sergeants that we would like to see. We're working towards that so that we can, again, make sure that we have the right amount of people that we can implement into the right places. So that's one of the highest objectives that we're trying to accomplish with that goal. Also within that goal, the objective of training, equipment, and quality of work life. We really want to focus on those things as well. Under goal number 3, community relations. Somebody once said that the police are the community and the community are the police. We believe that. We absolutely don't do this job without the support of our community and their input on how they want to be policed, right? We can sit here and decide what we want to do and what we think is important, but it's more important to know what the community expects from us and what they need from us. So maintaining those community engagements and the outreach that we do, whether it be Shop with a Cop or our Citizens Academy or Coffee with a Cop, all of those outreach programs that we do, and then our presence on social media, and just all of us from command staff being part of different community groups, like the chief is in the Kiwanis Club, and just being part of our community because we believe in that, and we think that's why we've been so successful is because of our partnership. So that's goal number 3. Also within that goal, improving communication. That's typically where we see breakdowns in our profession is communication. So internally, externally, making sure that we have good communications internally with our folks. The chief does biweekly updates that she sends out every 2 weeks to keep our people informed as to what's going on. We do quarterly supervisor meetings. We meet with our external partners just to maintain those good working relationships as well. Goal number 4, effective partnerships, as we talked about. That's our law enforcement partners, our other professional partners like the Partners Against Narcotics Trafficking, MAT Force, and our community engagement like I alluded to before. And then the last goal, goal number 5, looking at our facilities and our infrastructure. We've obviously grown over the last several years, and we're going to continue to grow. So we're looking at maximizing the use of the space that we have now and looking at our future needs as well. We did a space analysis this last year, so we have a pretty good idea of what we have currently and what we need to build out to. So again, that's part of our strategic plan as well. This next slide just kind of captures everything that we do. It really hits on every area within the department that you're going to hear from our lieutenants and from the PRCC manager here in just a second. But what we do is we protect our community. We enforce laws, both state and local laws. We promote trust and cooperation with the public that we serve. We gather evidence, we conduct interviews, and we analyze information. We provide emotional support and victims' rights information and resource referrals to all of our crime victims, which is a very important thing for us. And then we manage access and preserve police records as well. So that's kind of what we do. And with that, I am going to turn it over to our patrol commander, Lieutenant Gary Novak, to talk about patrol operations.
Mayor, City Council, good afternoon. Lieutenant Gary Novak. I do see over patrol, animal control canine, and property and evidence. So we'll start off with animal control. Currently we have 2 officers working animal control, 1 supervisor and 1 animal control officer, and 2 vehicles. You can see the numbers of calls. It's kind of a highlight of what they do. 4,454 calls for service. Now, most of those calls are self-initiated, proactive, going out to the trailheads, to the parks, and community-based policing. 71 animal cruelty calls, 93 bite calls, and 181 barking dog calls for service. Getting into our canine unit, currently 2 canine officers, 2 canines, 2 vehicles, climate-controlled vehicles. We have Officer Alltop with Canine Cooper. You can see how many training events they do per year, training hours, detection exercises, canine deployments, and drug seizures. We also have Officer Luke Million and his canine partner, Benny. As you can see, his numbers slightly lower, but that's due to the fact that he's recently appointed a canine officer back in October. So it does take several months to get his training hours and to get his certification. He was recently certified in January of this year. So those numbers will drastically increase over the next year. And also with Officer Alltop, he is currently assigned to the Prescott Area Narcotics Traffic Force, the Partners Against Narcotic Trafficking, PANT. So he is attached to them, so his numbers are greatly higher as he helps them out tremendously. Getting into the patrol, currently we have 6 sergeants, one of those being administrative sergeants, 42 officers assigned to patrol, 30 vehicles, 1 mobile command unit. Currently we have 5 patrol squads with 7 officers assigned and a sergeant. The stats for this year, or last year, 44,619 calls for service. Out of those, 1,605 arrests were made. Total number of reports taken by officers, 9,041. Sex offender checks, 659. Now that number is a yearly number of sex offenders that we check through our SOAP program, Sex Offender Accountability Program. So every month our officers go out and check on the sex offenders within the city of Prescott. So currently, and I believe Lieutenant Small has a slide on that, there's 93 current sex offenders within the city limits of Prescott. So out of those, that number does fluctuate up and down. So out of those, we did 659 checks on them last year to ensure that they're adhering to their conditions of release, still registered, still at the same address, and other criteria that they need to meet. We have taken 371 lost and found reports. Average response time, this shows February of this year. Our average response time is about 8.5 minutes. Last year, our average response time was approximately 9.5 minutes, with the national average being 10 minutes. But out of that, our priority 1 calls, which are the more serious calls, the lights and sirens that we're running to, that was about 6.5 minutes on our response time. Calls for service are up about 7%. Community-based policing is up 19%, which is great. That means our officers are going out there and actually doing some self-initiated work. Property and evidence, items numbers processed last year, 6,363 pieces of evidence. Items held, 19,470. There were 22,659 evidence requests. Most of those requests are from other agencies such as legal, the county attorney's office, the sheriff's office. So, and those are pieces of evidence that were requested. Items destroyed, 1,574. And then number of pounds of drugs last year that were incinerated, 928. And it's important to point out in this number, most of those pounds, 906 of those 928 pounds were through our dump the drug program. So those are the prescription drugs that are brought into our facility from citizens who can bring those in so we can properly dispose of them. So they're not going in the trash, they're not getting flushed, they're not getting put in the sink, or worst case scenario, somehow getting out on the streets. So out of that, only 22 pounds were actual illegal drugs that we had in property that we were able to destroy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Small.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Lieutenant Jason Small, and I'm the Special Operations Bureau Lieutenant. I oversee community services, investigations, and traffic safety. So our community services section, it's got one sergeant. Right now, it's currently got one officer, but we're budgeted for 4, and we'll be filling those back in as soon as we can. Once some of our people get off of FTO, we're going to be able to start bringing us up to staff in that area, and you'll see a lot more people on bicycles in the downtown area and on the trails. We have one, it's a terrorism liaison officer, basically an intelligence officer. And right now we have 2 school resources officers, and that one of those is new, and I'll talk about the stats in those in a second, but it's great that we now have 2 rather than just 1 at the high school. So the 2023 stats for community service bike patrols, they did 68. They did 86 presentations and trainings, 95 special events. We've recently partnered with the city attorney, and as you're aware, we've revamped the camping statutes and some of the panhandling. Those cases are starting to go forward through the city attorney's office. You should see an impact of that progressing. So we've got 12 arrests as of recently. The terrorist liaison officer, he's done 101 patrol and investigations assist, 17 threat assessments, and 46 background checks. So part of that job that the terrorist liaison officer does, they do, at the request of a business or an agency, they'll do a threat assessment on your property and your operation, try to give you some advice. We work a lot with churches, we work a lot with schools, we work with with Ruger, some of our bigger businesses in town. So the school resource officers, they've been very busy, very active, and very needed. The high school officers taught 635 students, 20 classes. He's had 75 criminal cases investigated with 66 arrests. The Mile High Middle School officer, which is a new position, 337 students taught, 15 classes, 70 criminal cases investigated, 17 arrests, and I'll note, as soon as we got him into that position, we had, if you remember, we had a shooting out at one of the carnivals. That case was able to get quickly cleared and developed into a larger gang case because of information gained from that Mile High Middle School liaison officer. It paid off very quickly. So I also oversee the investigation section. We have a sergeant and 6 general investigators, as well as 2 grant-funded sexual assault investigators. Those are a 75-25 match. 1 crime scene investigator, 1 PANT narcotics investigator. It's currently vacant, and we plan to fill that within the next year. We do oversee as Gary talked about, the SOAP program, the Sex Offender Accountability Program. We monitor the 93 sex offenders. The result of what patrol does in their monitoring brings us the information, and we make cases against those who aren't adhering to what they're obliged to do. The thing about the Sex Offender Accountability Program is we do more than the minimum. We do what's legally allowed, but we check on our sex offenders, make sure that they're where they're supposed to be, doing what they're supposed to be doing once a month. That's not the minimum, but it is what's allowed by law. We also conduct proactive human trafficking stings. You've seen those in the news from time to time. We investigate the majority of the felony crimes. Our 2023 stats, total cases assigned were 347. That was down by 28 from last year. Total number of arrests, 60. That was up by 16 from last year. Total number of search warrants, 87. That was up by 31 from last year. Our homicides, we had 3. One was an attempted homicide, so 2 actual homicides, 1 attempted homicide. We've got 100% clearance on those. 3 robberies, 100% clearance on those. 16 aggravated assaults, 75% clearance on those. 22 sexual assaults, we've got 81% clearance on those. Those aren't necessarily always arrests, but it's a clearance whether we have, if the suspect were to die or a victim doesn't want to aid, where we've gotten to the resolution of the case, it's not just closed without having developed a resolution. 14 child exploitation cases, 71% clearance there, and 73 other sex crimes. And I'll say with the child exploitation cases, our investigation section has developed a computer forensics, basically an office and an investigator that is probably one of the better in the state. And we work with the Internet Crimes Against Children, develop leads, and we work those cases, and they're very successful. Prescott is very well known for the quality of investigation when it comes to the computer forensics. The traffic safety section, 1 sergeant. We're allotted 4 traffic officers, the motor officers. We currently have 2 with 2 positions vacant. We'll be filling one of those positions April 15th. One of the officers just broke his hand, so he's going to be down for a little bit. We have 3 civilian accident investigators. 2 are part-time. So some of our hot spots are the highest concentration of collision areas are Willow Creek, Miller Valley, Whipple, Montezuma. So if you look at our 2023 stats, the collisions is 638, non-injury are 469, injury 49. We had 2 fatalities. And you'll see our traffic contacts, 6,576, parking citations, 2,064, parking warnings, 231. What I'll mention with the citations, I know you guys, I get to, from time to time, get to see some emails and some letters that come in. And typically, they're usually neighborhood areas that are requesting higher presence. I'll let you know that we do analyze our traffic flow. We analyze where we're having injury crashes. But having said that, we do address each one of those requests. So it does get some time. It may not be as much time as people would like to have in their neighborhood, but most of those neighborhood requests are areas that have 0 injury traffic crashes or 0 crashes at all. So we do allot some time for those, but primarily we try to focus on the areas that are going to make the biggest difference, especially with injuries. So if you look comparatively to our 2022 stats, total crashes were 605, so we're up a little bit. Non-injury 449, injury 135 with, again, two fatalities. I also oversee the technical support unit. So this is our I don't know if you've seen them yet, but our drones and robots, anything that we use technology-wise, cameras, to help assist in investigations. We help with SWAT. We help during the parades. If you've seen during the major events, we usually have overwatch with the drone. It gives us an overview and situational awareness. It allows us to manage people, manage movement, see if there's anything that's suspicious or shouldn't be there. So that group has been unbelievably helpful and a step up in what our capabilities are. We've deployed them 25 times. 20 of them were call-outs, 2 special events. They work the collisions. They help document the fatal collisions. So we'll run the drone to show the overview of a crash and help document for civil and for criminal prosecutions. And then they did 4 search and rescues. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Corey Kassoon.
Can I have that too?
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor and Council, Lieutenant Corey Kassoon. The first thing I'd like to point out is I actually have like 5 things under the support bureau where I think the other 2 only had 3. Just a little humor. All right, going into it. So I am the support bureau lieutenant for the police department. I've been there for 24 years. And I supervise the records section, which is the ladies that you see up front when you walk in the front doors of the police department. They are a huge resource to us, not only for our customer service representation. They're the face of the police department when you come in, but they also manage our records management section, which is all the reports that are processed through the officers in the field all the way up. It ends with them, and then they filter that out and make sure the reports are getting to our prosecution agencies, the city attorney's office, county attorney, and they fulfill all the public records requests as well. You can see just this last calendar year, the 3,659 public records requests were filled, 75 of those being requests for body camera, which, this is our third year with body-worn cameras, and the requests are going up. Just kind of a side note on that as well. It takes about, all that stuff needs to be generally redacted for public consumption, and so it takes about 5 hours to redact 1 hour of camera footage. So very time intensive. They also handle all the reports that are filed online. So all of our crash reports that are filed online, as well as misdemeanor and small crime stuff that we allow people to file their own reports online, they process those as well. They're comprised of 3 record clerks, 1 supervisor, and then we do have 1 station officer, civilian call taker, that handles walk-in traffic as well as phone traffic. Moving along. I oversee the Training and Recruiting Bureau as well. We have 1 officer assigned to training and recruiting. And over the course of last year, we hired 11 officers. He stays very busy because he also helps out with the hiring for PRCC as well. So he hired 12 civilian employees, performed 56 background investigations, and he also oversees a lot of the training and facilitates a lot of training for our in-service, training for our officers, civilian and sworn as well. And so he put on 144 classes, and officers attended, and including our civilian staff, 4,413 hours of advanced training over the course of the last year. Social media and outreach. That's something I know we're trying to always increase our footprint with our social media. Our social media outreach coordinator does an excellent job posting all of our social media, 429 posts either on Instagram or Facebook just in the last year. We also pride ourselves in our community outreach. You've all probably seen us at our Pink Patch events where we look to raise money for breast cancer awareness in partnership with our community. And then our community outreach events, whether it's with our schools or partnering with the library and putting on events for the kids, we did 45 of those over the course of the last year. Neighborhood block watches, we attended 12 of those. And then we host biannually a Citizens Academy where we have anywhere from 20 to 25 members of our public attend, which shows all aspect, very transparent, inside look at the police department. We have very positive reviews on those. And then our signature event, of course, is our Shop with a Cop event that we host every December with the support of all Yavapai County law enforcement agencies. So we're very proud of that event. It is also one of my responsibilities to be the commander over our SWAT team, which is Special Weapons and Taxes Team. And a lot of people are surprised to find that we do have a very active SWAT team in our community. We are a collateral duty team, which means we're not full-time. The officers and the members of that team are not assigned to the team full-time. They have other areas, primary areas of responsibility, whether it be patrol, investigations, or community service. But they are available to come out upon call. We respond to about 12 calls a year, and that would include some of our overwatch details that we perform throughout the community. Some of our bigger events, we do deploy on those to provide overwatch and quick reaction forces in case things go awry, right? We are called out to deal with all high-risk situations, such as barricades, hostage situations, high-risk search warrants, high-risk arrests. We do provide dignitary protection. As you know, when Trump comes here, we provide protection details, as well as when McCain spoke on the courthouse steps during his campaign, we provided protection detail for that as well. Obviously trained to handle any active assailant or active killer situations that we may encounter. And then I mentioned it before, but special events Overwatch, the times that we live in, we have increased our presence during those events as well to keep our community safe. It's comprised of 24 members, which includes our partnership with Prescott Fire Department, where we have 3 medics, full-time firefighter medics that are on our team. That does a couple things. One, it provides immediate care for our officers should they get hurt during a call or training, but it also provides immediate care to the community members out there that we come across. So it's a really good addition. We've had a medic on our team since we started, but increasing it to 3 paramedics who can provide advanced life-saving support on scene is critical to us. Our team is comprised of, obviously, team commander, which is me. We have a team leader, and then a few assistant team leaders that oversee the immediate response team, our breaching unit, sniper unit, and our crisis negotiation unit as well, which we have a 4-member team to include 1 sergeant on that. With that, I'll wrap it up. One thing I didn't really touch on, another one of my assignments is I am the commander over the Northern Arizona Regional Training Academy as well. That is our local police academy where we train all new hire police officers from really all over the state of Arizona. Sometimes we, over the course since its inception of 1996, we've trained over 54 agencies from around the state. So that's a real great partnership that we have with Yavapai College and all other local area law enforcements where we send our new recruits to get trained. So I will pass it along to Rob Martin to talk about PRCC.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Rob Martin, Communications Manager for Prescott Regional Communications Center. So this is our budget. You can see the total operating budget is almost 4.5 million there. And most of it is in the personnel, just like with the police department. One thing I want to say about our budget is a little bit more unique than other budgets just because we're on a cost sharing model, which means we currently dispatch for 9 agencies. 1 a private EMS company and 8 partner agencies. And so that's based off of calls for service. And so we bill monthly based off of the charges that accumulate within that month. So currently Prescott Police is about 30.7% of our budget, and Prescott Fire is 17.6% of our budget. So it comes out to about 48% of the budget right now. There's our current personnel is 18 dispatchers, and you can see we're budgeted 29. We're down right now due to a lot of, we've had some recent turnover just for retirements, which is really good that they've been with us that long. So we're just actively recruiting and working on filling that. These are the agencies that we dispatch for. There's 4 fire, 4 police, and those are our partner agencies, and then the private EMS ambulance company. Here's some stats and accomplishments for 23. You can see we took 189,295 calls, and of those calls, calls for service were 87,170. So you can see the difference there. Those are the calls that actually come in that we handle at PRCC, but not every call generates a call for service. So that's how busy our personnel are behind the scenes. One of the other things I want to point out there in those accomplishments is the next gen 911, the phase 4 upgrade. So the state purchased a new phone system for all dispatch centers in the state, which is a huge cost savings for us. And so we went from 10 consoles to 12 consoles. So now the state provides 911 services to all 12 of those consoles. So what I mean when I say next gen 911 is that's all the best practices and the latest technology that we have to offer to us and to our community. So that means like text to 911, video to 911. We have new technology called Rapid SOS that allows us to ping a cell phone before it even rings into the center. We know where that is. So, and that's been proven to be about 90% accurate. So that's really good for our community. That middle column there kind of breaks down the calls for service out of that 87,000. So 35,519 for police calls, 26,445 for fire calls, and 25,206 for the EMS calls. The last column there kind of breaks down all the calls coming in. The 7-digit emergency lines, that's just like the listed police lines and fire lines that we have. And then the 911, whether it comes in wireless or a landline phone, the voice over internet protocol, and the text to 911, you can see that's 2,872. So really, people like to talk to somebody when they call, especially on an emergency. So we don't get too many of those yet, but we are seeing an increase on that. The 911 abandoned calls are calls that when people call in and they don't stay on 911, so they either hang up. It still rings into the center. They don't realize it rang through, so we have to call back. Sometimes it's accidental. Sometimes it's an emergency. And with that, I'll turn that over to
Send it back. All right, so I'm going to close this out before we turn it over to fire and talk a little bit about some of the innovations that we have made in the past couple of years in terms of doing things better, but also maybe a little bit more efficiently. As you know, we have our special use facility canine, Eden. Some of you have had the opportunity to meet her. She is in our victim services unit and assists victims primarily while they go to court to testify. And so far, actually, she's in court today, helping some victims testify in court. And we're up to hundreds of hours where suspects have been sentenced to prison, or hundreds of years, I'm sorry, where they have been sentenced to prison, being held accountable for their crimes. So we're very proud of that. We were the first in Yavapai County to have a full-time facility use canine. Again, she was donated to us by the Department of Public Safety and funded entirely by community donations. Our terrorism liaison officers, we've mentioned that several times, but the partnership that we have both regionally, state, and also with our federal partners, really to keep this community safe. We communicate with them on a regular basis, and anytime we have a special event or anytime we have somebody who might be making suspicious phone calls, we received one just the other day, and we want to know a little bit more about them, or we want to know, are there any active threats that are occurring across our country as it regards to special events or holidays or anything like that. So our terrorism liaison officers are very successful. Technical support team and our Flock stationary LPR system. We do use cameras in partnership, most recently even private partnerships, to be able to investigate crimes and be able to hold people accountable. And so one of those systems is the Flock stationary license plate reader system that does help us be able to identify vehicles and, like I said, hold those folks accountable. Technical support system. Or support unit, I'm sorry. So that includes search and rescue, SWAT calls, wildland and structural fires, event security, collisions and crime scenes, our drones that Jason talked about, our robots that we talked about, as well as our mapping systems. And so technology has really come into play in the past 5 to 7 years within law enforcement. And so we're really trying to not only make our investigations more complete, but also make our officers safer and our community safer with the use of those. So how do we do all these things? Well, first of all, it's our people. And I speak for all of us at this table. We are tremendously proud of our people and the men and women that serve our community every day, both as our professional staff and as our sworn staff. Lots of money in grants. We look to our federal state partnerships, our Governor's Office of Highway Safety for our traffic safety section, sexual assault response detectives as well. So hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant funding. We could not do what we do without the volunteers that we have. We have 16 volunteers, and many of them donate as many hours as a full-time employee to our department. So we are very thankful for our volunteers and the savings and the support that they offer to us. Community support has been something that has been a theme throughout all of this, and it is a tremendous privilege to serve a community that is so supportive of us as a public safety team in everything that we do. We have a youth scholarship program that occurs at Prescott High School that's funded through the community and rewards high-performing students who are role models for others. Our Shop with a Cop program, entirely funded by community donations every year. Our canines, and all of those programs that we have. And then finally, our city leadership and our elected support could not do it without that. So I want to round up with just kind of some positive things. So we do send out surveys to people who experience police services in Prescott, and we have a 41% return rate of those and a 91% positivity rate. And I would argue that, unlike my peers to the right, people don't call us when things are going well, right? They call us when things are going really, really badly. And so for them to say things like the epitome of professionalism, tactful and helpful, no judgment, professional, courteous, efficient, listen to me, very kind and professional, I think speaks volumes about the services that the men and women of the Prescott Police Department provide. And did we want to talk about this now, Tyler, or do you want us to?
Yeah, I would say talk about it now, and we'll kind of wrap it up as well at the end of.
All right. Okay, so to wrap this up on our end, a little bit about what we anticipate we need immediately. There's been a lot of discussion about what long-term plans police and fire have and what our needs are for long-term. And so we really sat down and considered, what do we need immediately? Approximately $18 million in immediate capital, and part of that is considering the acquisition of land and construction of a scalable building to address our future needs. And I say scalable because I want to leave our options open for the future, right? So something that we can build upon so that the hit isn't huge in our capital as it would be if we were to build out a full building. As you know, our downtown station has been in place since 1991, and you also know that there's a lot of construction and development that's going to be happening around there. We anticipate that there's going to be an impact to our ability to operate, and so looking really to the future to moving some of our operations out to a more central location to serve the areas in the north, and also allow us to continue to serve our community in the downtown area, because that's where a majority of our calls are concentrated. So what we would propose is construct this building and move our property and evidence unit out of the police department that we have downtown, probably look to locate it closer to the Justice Center that is over there on Prescott Lakes Parkway. Move some of our patrol operations to a remote location, again allowing them to continue to serve the north areas and the areas that we know take us a little bit longer to move to, and anticipating the congestion of downtown for those operations so that we can continue to respond as we need to. All right, and so that's what we're going to talk about. I know you have questions, but we're going to stay right on time, I believe. Look at that. Thank you. I'll turn it over to my partner.
All right, Mayor and Council, Gordura Fire Chief, really appreciate the chance to be in front of you today. Oops, found the one mic that even for me is too tall, as short as this is. So a couple things I want to cover before we get started. First of all, the partnership you see in front of you is not by accident. This is a community where police and fire do get along, not just for show, but for real. And that is a huge compounding impact for public safety because the partnerships that exist. You heard about the SWAT medic program. The other thing is we're about to have a lot of data in front of you. None of those data points could have happened without our team. Our firefighters, as I mentioned before, are incredible. Here in the room with us, I believe, is a few folks that I want to introduce beyond the table. We've got Lori Burkeen, I believe, behind me. If I turn around, I'll probably rip my jacket. Hannah Hickman, Jamie Sventek, who's just been promoted to contracts coordinator in the finance department, so we're extremely proud of her. And then also we have three of our battalion chiefs, Bill Hickey, Dave Haskell, and Jeff Moffitt, and they represent an incredible team of firefighters. So with that, last year's, you recall, in March, I brought to you a new strategic plan. And one of the major issues in that strategic plan was a refocused identity. Sure, we have a vision statement and a mission statement that we looked to as well, but community first, courage, grit, and duty, and driven by excellence is more than just a statement for us. It is what our folks live every day. Councilmember Gambogi was just on a ride-along about a week and a half ago, and you got to experience that. It is simply in our DNA. A little overview of the department. We deliver 368 distinct services with approximately 77 full-time personnel. A lot of those personnel do work that's administrative from 56-hour shift positions. And while I'm extremely proud of that, we're also working on making sure that we have the appropriate administrative support so that they can focus on their primary duties, which is response. A few things that I do want to highlight on that broad service delivery is the community risk management functions and non-emergency response functions that this fire department provides. With your support this year, we were able to expand into wildfire risk management with a full-time addition there. And the formation of the Forestry Health and Risk Reduction Program. And that's just one example of the non-response services the fire department provides. We're also the primary ALS provider, advanced life support, in the city of Prescott. Our paramedics are first on scene, and they work, of course, hand in hand with either priority or AMR to transport the patient to the hospital. But again, it is our paramedic that has that primary patient care, and we're extremely proud of that role. The staffing that you see there, you can read that for yourself. The bulk, of course, is assigned to our 5 fire stations. But in our civilian staff, I want to highlight a few things. First of all, we have a total of 7 civilians. You'll learn a little bit more about that when our deputy chief and our division chiefs talk about their areas. But we also have 4 to 6 variable hourly staff, and that is a flexible staffing option for the fire department that we've been using pretty actively since the 2008 recession. So currently, our fire marshal is also a variable hourly employee, Don Devenorf. Many of you know him. As we jokingly say, we recycle old fire chiefs. And he's doing a fantastic job helping us with that extremely important customer service aspect. And then we also have 21 volunteers. Approximately 2/3 of that are actually what you might consider explorers. They're high school age kids, so it's not just an extension into the community there, but it's also an active recruiting component for the department. Most of our budget is, of course, as in many of the departments, in personnel, but we are also capital intensive. The reason why that number in fiscal year 23-24 on the capital budget is so high is 2 reasons. Number one, there's $1.6 million in that capital budget to begin the design and siting for the new fire stations. And then in addition, there's also quite a bit of money in the heavy equipment fleet, so fire trucks. This council has been very, very supportive in helping us get caught up. And the ladder truck that you approved with ARPA money a few years ago is also in that number. So, okay, we also have a newly designed organizational chart, and while I will not go through every single one of these components, I do just want to make sure that you understand we're very clear in terms of how we divide our labor from the council and policy direction at your level all the way down to the execution and program level. This is also in your materials as well as the annual report that you have gotten today. If you have any questions about that, we can definitely cover that. A few highlights, you know our population and the average daily population as staff often brings forward is 100,000, and that impacts this fire department significantly. We have 5 stations currently, but we also do closest unit dispatch with those 10 Central Arizona Fire and Medical Authority stations. So in effect, the region, and you see some of the square mileage there that CAFM protects, together we protect approximately 400 square miles with 15 stations and 3 battalions. And what that means for the resident is that it doesn't matter what patch is on the side of the shoulder or what sticker is on the engine, the closest appropriate unit responds to the emergency and provides that level of care. And any day we may have one of our engines in Chino, and one of their engines may be responding here in Courthouse Square. As a matter of fact, Engine 51 at Williamson Valley and Iron Springs probably has approximately 70 to 75% of their responses actually within city limits, and that just represents the partnership that we have with Central Arizona. Another interesting statistic is that our operational budget currently is about $15.6 million, and we protect approximately $15.2 billion in actual cash value. That came from the assessor's office, which is about 0.1% of the operating budget of the fire department. The average cost to the resident when you divide it out is about $332, which is, I think, a pretty darn good deal if you think about it. A couple things I want to highlight in terms of the major accomplishments. I won't read this whole list. Again, you have this in your materials. The new organizational structure is very, very important to us. It helps us with the efficiencies, but it also is built around the strategic plan that we represented to you. 4 divisions were distinctly established with 16 unique programs, and those programs are being managed through program appraisals that I'll highlight here in just a second. We also designed and launched a new department website that was in part, obviously, to update our look, but mainly because it was a recruiting tool for us to be able to recruit more firefighters. And with the mayor's support, we were able to kick that off approximately a year and a half ago, and I'm happy to report that earlier this year we were able to complete that. The other big news, and this is, again, with your support, we were able to add 6 firefighters, an operations chief, a wildfire risk manager, and an additional administrative specialist. And those positions have already begun to show their extreme effect. And Chief Lucas is going to highlight a couple of those things from his role because he is the operations chief for our department. We're also, of course, presenting to you a station construction plan as we respond to community growth, and we'll cover a little bit more about that here in just a second. We adopted the new results-oriented strategic plan and established the forestry health risk and reduction program. And those are just, like I said, a few of the highlights that I wanted to call out here in this longer list. And there's definitely more here that would have made you squint your eyes, kind of like what you see here. The reason why that small text is there is just to show you how we track our strategic plan. As you know, it is an outcome data-driven plan. That is built on the heart of this organization. And what you see there is something called Microsoft Planner, and that is something the senior leadership team gets into every 2 months and checks on our update of all of the progress goals that we have, 22 goals in our strategic plan. And those are also the very same goals that we report to you in our bi-monthly report. A couple of things that changed this year because that plan needs to be active. It is the same planning methodology that the council recently used through Managing for Results. We updated our program budget structure and adjusted a couple of division purpose statements. One area to highlight there is that we added the wildfire risk management program as a distinct program, so we were able to track metrics. We also added a community risk management goal, and that is actually to study the workload and risk management. So we'll be focusing on that in fiscal year 25, as well as some workforce-related goals around recruitment and retention and the safety of our shift schedules. The fire station construction timeframes have been adjusted. We've been in conversations with all of you, and I'm sure there's going to be continued conversations around that. But that highlights the fact that this plan is adaptable, scalable, and flexible to meet actual needs in the community. The program appraisals that were initially part of the strategic plan are now completely digital because they are working documents. All 16 program appraisals, as a matter of fact, today I just sent the email out this morning to kick that off to our program managers, and they're in those program appraisals on an annual basis at separate touch points, and those drive our budget, our strategic planning performance, as well as our accreditation compliance. Finally, we have a consolidated financial impact analysis in the initial plan. We had a lot of these things broken out, and it was much more effective for us to consolidate that so that there were consistent numbers reported to you, as well as in our planning documents to eliminate any confusion. As you recall, there were 7 key issues that were identified. None of these really surprised any of us, but staffing and infrastructure, occupational safety, data collection and analysis, just a few of the ones that we covered in greater detail about a year ago. And we're going to talk about a few of those here a little bit later on in the presentation. This might look familiar to you because that dashboard is actually from the bi-monthly report. We will continue to, every 2 months, supply you with updates solely through the lens of our strategic plan so that we stay focused around that planning document. We take that strategic plan seriously and to make sure that we have the accountability with all of you. Currently, that status is approximately 15% of the goals have not yet been started. There's nothing completely delayed or off track. 20% are behind schedule, which are related to the capital construction items. 50% of our goals are on track and 15% are completed, but I'm also happy to report that we're putting those in maintenance status because they were important. They're not just check boxes to move on from. The bullet list below there you have in your bi-monthly report from last time and also in your material, so I won't belabor those points. But before I get really down into the data, I do want to make a quick point here. Yes, this fire department is increasingly data-driven. Data is one of our values, but it is not the only value. The human impact is what we're really trying to measure. And at the end of the day, every single one of the data points that we have in front of you represents a story. And that story doesn't only include one of our residents, it also includes one of our personnel, one of our employees that's providing that service. So I want to make sure that we never lose sight of that. I've mentioned to you before, this fire department is extraordinarily special. It has a culture that is extremely unique. And in order for us to keep that culture, we need to make sure we keep an eye on that as much as we keep an eye on our data. The divisions that I mentioned, 4 divisions got established with 16 unique programs. Again, this is also in your handout materials. I know this is a little bit small to read, and I've supplied you with one of the program appraisals in our capital investments in your council packets for this meeting. So if you want to review those and have further questions, I'm definitely happy to answer those. But just know that what you have in your council packets, there's 16 of those that are constantly being worked on in order to manage this department. We have 270 measures that last anything from an output all the way to an impact or outcome statement. 15 of those are key measures that we will continue to report to you. And like I mentioned, there's 22 goal areas that are driving this department forward. And with that, let's get right into our program areas. So the Office of the Chief has 5 of those programs. A couple of ones that I want to highlight is research and technology. Just like the police department, technology is extremely important to us. As a matter of fact, is going to be a primary tool to help us with some of the efficiencies that we're trying to implement. And the Live Move Up module that went live on February 15th that I informed you about has been in effect for approximately a month. And I'm happy to report that the move ups have significantly decreased, and we've also gotten some information. For instance, one time engine 51, which is that CAFMA engine at Williamson Valley and Iron Springs, was moved into Station 75's area at Lee Boulevard, and on the way there, they were dispatched to a call in Station 75's area. So the predictive analytics that we were hoping for actually came through. Now, it's a little early. I want to make sure that we've got a data set before we really give you a report out, but that's some progress. The other thing, as you can imagine, you probably know this about me by now, organizational performance management means a lot to me, and that has a distinct program. All of our accreditation is in that program, and we are getting reaccredited starting basically next month. We'll have a peer team on the ground here in fall again, and we'll be in front of the commission in March, and that program is the one that takes care of that. The gentleman that you see to my right, the deputy chief, is part of this program as well. And of course, the 2 administrative coordinators and 2 administrative specialists that we then assign to specific areas in the department. A couple of highlights that I haven't already covered. Of course, we talked about the funding ratio here. We talked about the accreditation. We are one of 14 departments in Arizona that is internationally accredited and one of 324 worldwide. And we're extremely proud of that, not because there's a sticker on the truck, but because we're holding ourselves to a standard and having an outside entity come in and verify and validate that we do what we say we do. And that's a really, really big deal. A couple of the initiatives that I do want to cover this year, obviously we have that organizational realignment. That is very, very important. But we also were able to renew our community engagement along with the families of the 19. Many of you were able to attend our commemoration activities in June of 2023. They were extremely well received by both the community as well as the families. And we're going to continue that path as it's extremely important to have those connections. Finally, a couple of things that you see here. There's an extreme amount of administrative activities that go through our offices, but until we started counting them, we didn't exactly know. So just a couple of things that's kind of interesting is 1,619 invoices were processed. We do have 6 grants that we're actively administering. A lot of those are in the forestry, health, and risk reduction areas. And then we attended 92 public events just in the Office of the Chief. That doesn't count all the fire engines that go out and do public education activities. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Lucas.
You can be my clicker. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Ralph Lucas, I'm the operations chief. Kind of a little interesting note about me is I was the operations chief in 2007, 8, and 9. When the economy got bad, we had to renegotiate our staff positions, and I went back onto the floor as a battalion chief until this year. So through a competitive process, I retested for this position and was given it back. And it's a pleasure to be here with our staff and with you to tell you a little bit about the fire department. And I think, as I was looking down the table, I'm a little embarrassed, but I think I'm the most tenured person at this table with 30 years of service with the city of Prescott. And I'm going to give you some metrics here in a minute that'll explain why I said that. So basically, emergency operations is all the firefighters and the fire stations. The bulk of the fire department members reside within this division. 66 out of 77 of the fire department members are in the operations division. We are tasked with 4 program areas that you can see up there. and those are fire suppression, obviously. Then we have special operations, and special operations breaks down into 4 categories in my mind. Those 4 categories are hazardous materials, technical rescue, aircraft rescue firefighting, and wildland firefighting operations. All of those special operations require special credentialing. It's not like you can just say, oh, I'm a TRT guy, and then go throw a rope off the side of Granite Mountain and rescue somebody. There's a high level of proficiency that exists within all of those special operations. And one of our battalion chiefs behind here runs the special operations group. We have emergency medical services, which is huge in our community. It's about 65% of the balance of the calls that we run. And then we have a health and safety program. We're broken into 3 shifts, A, B, and C. It's the most effective way to maintain 24-hour coverage of a fire department. And I think it's interesting to note that we get asked a lot of questions that that the public does not understand. Like, for example, why does a fire engine have 3 people on it? And we have minimum staffing requirements. So it's not like if we had 4 of our engines had 3 people on it and then one of our engines had 2 people on it, that would not work. We would actually have to shut that engine down because that's the minimum number of personnel that can effectively operate that piece of equipment. And I'll get to that a little bit more specifically here shortly. Our current staffing is 21 members. We're currently down 6 firefighters, but we have 4 in the academy. We were approved for some overhires recently, thanks to all of you. We had 9 folks come to interviews in front of the staff you see before you. And we talked a little bit about culture, and we put the right people in the seats on this fire department, not just people in the seats. So out of the candidates that came forward, we chose 4. We actually chose 5. 1 denied it, and we brought on 4. So just a little indication there of we're just not filling seats because we have to have them. We really look for the right people to work for this community. So right now we're functioning with 19 members per shift. So that's split up amongst 5 fire stations, and then you have a battalion chief or a supervisor on that 24-hour shift. I'll give you a little bit of perspective there as it relates to my tenure. When I started in 1994, it was 17. And in 1994, the Prescott Fire Department ran 4,000 calls. In 2023, the Prescott Fire Department has run in 2023, ran nearly 12,000 calls. It was a 199% increase in call volume with 2 additional personnel per shift. In addition, a national standard, if you were to look at a standard structure fire, a residential structure fire that you would see anywhere here in Prescott, let's take a cookie cutter home at one of our subdivisions versus one of the older Victorian style homes, requires what's called an emergency or an effective response force. It's determined on how many people you need to do the amount of work that's required to put out a standard single family dwelling. That ERF is 17. So if we were to send a full effective response force to a structural fire, that would rout out the city of Prescott. We would have no firefighters available. And the only reason I say that is because it highlights the relationship we have with our partner CAFMA. But at the same time, that relationship has to be reciprocal in nature. You know, it's not like we get routed out and then they just send all their stuff over to us. We have to be reciprocal in nature. So kind of an interesting thought of kind of where we stand with staffing and stuff, because that's going to be part of the discussion here later on. Next slide, briefly, our major initiatives, organizational change. You know, our new fire chief has turned this department over. He really has. You know, I was due for retirement, and I'm staying on because of our fire chief. And the membership really believes in him and our leadership right now. So, and it's a great thing to be a part of. And it's something that I haven't seen at this high a level in my tenure. So we're striving for any way any efficiencies we can grab. We have an extremely healthy culture. As far as facilities and logistics, our infrastructure is outdated and in need of major repairs, renovations, and replacements. We're working hard with facilities and in any way to gain ground in this aspect. Logistics are definitely outpacing what we can provide our members because our members take care of most of the logistics, but when they're running calls, it's hard for them to take care of all the program areas that some 200 and some odd things that we do. Staffing additions to support response to call volume in a growing community and deal with the logistics of supporting our firefighters. A heightened wildland program focus. You know, since our tragedy, for obvious reasons, that kind of went away, but the problem didn't. And, you know, we're still considered a town that has its greatest risk secondary to a catastrophic wildland fire. And we need to get people back on board and the credentialing behind them to be able to provide that support in the event that something like that happened. So you can see some of the activity measures up there. Those are just some of the metrics as it relates to the calls we ran in 2023. And then one other thing I wanted to highlight was the firefighter work-related injury rate of 5.41% equals about 3.3 firefighters were injured in 2023 as a result of doing work here in the community. But all of those were minor. But thank you.
Okay, I guess it's up to me. My name's Tom Knapp. I am the operations assistant. So we try to prevent the events from happening in community risk before we have to send out a fire truck full of folks to put them in danger. And part of that is analyzing the risks that we see in the community, such as the viable businesses here that rely on tourism and keeping those operational so that the tax dollars flow, people come here and visit, and they have an enjoyable visit. Okay. So you see a few of the programs that we have. One of those, as Chief mentioned earlier, is in the office of the chief that I manage, and that's the administrative portion. That is the staff that operates the logistics for the fire department to make sure that we have the finances done, the payroll done, the training hours calculated, the support of all the personnel, and working with other divisions. So in the community risk division, we do risk reduction planning services. That involves analyzing new construction, tenant improvements, so that they meet the city's fire code, which is a little bit more stringent than the state fire code, but it's particular to our environment. The wildland urban interface, the infill lots, accessibility. There's a lot of infill lots in the community for a reason. They're very tough to build on. They're even tougher to get to. And we're going to try to send Chief Lucas's crews up the hill in the winter. So there's a lot of things we have to look at, and our crews do a really good job. And I'll tell you how many there really are here in a minute. The other is under risk management is the program of emergency management, and that's actually handled by Chief Dura and Chief Bonney, but it falls under risk management. So I get to sit on the outside and kind of run the grants or do whatever they tell me to do. And then the other one is fire investigations. Now, it's incumbent upon us to, with the fire code, to do investigations of fires, cause and origin. And that tells us where our problems are. About 4 or 5 years ago, the city had an influx of grease fires in restaurants. So our focus changed, and then we reduced those. And we see an uptick of that, and I'll tell you how we solved part of that in a minute. And then the big one down there is wildland risk management. Obviously, one of our highest exposures to this community for a lot of reasons. You know, our tourism, think about the Whiskey Off-Road race and what happened to that or could have happened to that during the Crooks Fire. By uniting with all of our partners and working on that, we were able to keep that race going and still protect the community. This year, we've been very, very fortunate on adding, recycling another employee, retired engineer from the department with a wealth of wildland experience, Conrad Jackson. And he is now our community wildfire risk manager. And you'll hear him, you'll see him, and that's his job, is to get out there and be heard. In our division, we have, and you'll see, plan, review, inspector, investigators. So those are three very distinct disciplines, and they're handled by two people. So they do all of it. In order to keep the plans moving and the construction permits moving, we've added an outsourced contract plans reviewer who's a certified building and fire code official. We've only done this for this last year. Prior to that, we hired a company to do it. Now we have somebody that understands the construction business, because that's the trade he came from, and he's doing a great job. At the same time, we mirrored our plan review services with that of CAFMA. So the contractors aren't confused on who to deal with. The rules are the same when it comes down to what's allowable. The codes are a little bit different, but we've created the ability for them to communicate. Coffee with a contractor has helped that, introduce that, where we meet. We try to meet quarterly. We've done it twice so far. And we have open discussions with the contractors and the service providers. We have one wildfire risk manager, and then we have what equates to 0.3 variable hourly fire marshal, and that's the recycled Chief Devendorf, bringing him in for his variable hourly and then some, I'm sure. Managing the daily activities of our risk managers, carrying the continuity of the town and the history of how things got here and how do we resolve some of our code issues. It's been invaluable. I came from the outside and I've been doing this a long time, but there are uniquenesses to this community that historically how things were built. And it was very important that we had somebody that understood the contractors as we improve and change. The variable hourly inspectors is really two people. And then we have what's not up there, I'm sorry, is the variable hourly plans examiner that we had working with us this year that does our technical high hazard gasoline stations, hazardous materials, and is able to go through those very rapidly. Let's see here. Here's some of the initiatives. First of all, organizational change. Well, we put all of us into one building where we were spread out. So that is a space and an identity change for a lot of our folks. They're working side by side in close proximity with other people, and some need to focus differently than others. So there's office environment changes. Innovation and technology, the use of, I know that some of you have gotten a letter from Brycer, and they are the compliance engine, and they are a third-party company that we've actually brought in to manage fire systems in the community. Two people cannot get out there and do these inspections, verify these inspections, let alone get into every building, commercial building and business in this community. It's impossible. By utilizing this service, we are able to send notice to the property owner that their fire protection system is either past due or due for an inspection and service. They will hire their company to come out. There's a cost of about $17 for that visit to log it into the Brycer system. And then we get a notification that we monitor daily. It tells us what the inspection was, did they have any deficiencies, and then it's also protected the property owner in several cases where we'll have a company come in and say, hey, your building was built 40 years ago. You had a fire alarm system in it, and they'll note that 15 fire alarm or pull boxes need to be relocated. Well, that's a red flag. We'll pull it. We'll send an inspector to evaluate it, and that's a conforming or an issue that's it's the building is actually conforming to the code that it was built to, existing non-conforming, and we will negate that and mitigate that request, and it will become permanent record so that you don't do it. That cost, if we didn't have this checks in place, is anywhere from $250 to $500 per pull box, and that's significant. This does not cost the city anything, but it gives us a wealth of information. Our biggest challenge with that is the fact that our data was so bad going in that we get residential houses that get a notice that they have to have their fire suppression system inspected. And then it's got my name on it, but a phone number in Minnesota and a physical address in Paradise Valley. And that's where their local office is. So we did some media blitzes and we're talking to the people. And it seems to be going well. The forestry and wildfire risk management program has gone very well with the accessibility of Mr. Jackson to the public at the POWEC or Fireways meetings has been remarkable. And I'll give you some of those highlights. Over 250 acres have been cleared in the community, 1,000 chipping sessions, and 750 tons of fuel have been recorded to be removed. On the construction inspections, our folks, those two folks, and the two variable hourlies did 1,383. And then plan reviews, 1,861. At the same time doing 19 fire investigations. Now, an average house fire takes 40 hours. So you put that on top of their workload. One of the other things we did with CAFMA this year is partnered because our fire investigators were rotating week on, week off, week on, week off, and there was no respite. By joining with them in a letter of agreement, we rotate call with 4 to 5 investigators, allowing our folks not to be on call around the clock. So I think that is it, sir. You are up. Thank you. Oh, Scott. Chief Ludeman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Scott Ludeman, Division Chief of Essential Services. I'm going to make this kind of quick because I know we got to move along and get some questions answered from you. So again, I'm the Division Chief over Essential Services. The main function of Essential Services is to provide logistical and professional support to our members. We've broken this out into 4 main program areas: training and skills development, readiness and logistics, and employee development. Just give a brief synopsis of each section. Training and skills development, that's basically the delivery of the training to our members to get the job done that we're doing. We do it tied directly into the operations division's goals through operations and the special operations programs. The readiness and logistics, that's a new program this year. Think of it as providing all the tools and equipment that we need on the truck to get the job done for our members. Interesting fact on that, the way we run things, they mentioned that our firefighters do most of the work on the department, right? And that includes managing budgets, developing the programs. This new program will combine 13 different program managers and provide efficiencies to that program and collaboration amongst each other to make sure that we're providing the services that need to be done. And then the employee development, that's where we really focus most of our efforts right now. Think of that on mentoring our members from the day they get hired to the day they retire, promoting through the ranks and things like that. Some stats on that section: we've provided 2 firefighter testings in the last year and brought on a total of 12 new hires through 2 academies. This next academy will be graduating in May. We will be moving to a green academy in the future. I think we kind of discussed that a little bit earlier. We're not lowering our standards. We're just changing the way we're recruiting and trying to get people on our floor. We're going to require EMT onlys coming up in the future as opposed to fully credentialed. We'll teach them what we want them to know in our academies. A little longer academy, which will take more time, 15 weeks versus 7 weeks. But we think it'll provide a more people applying for us, as well as a better quality employee in the long run. We also do career path assessments, which a lot of you have heard is succession planning in our department. With the new stations that we're requesting and just the future retirements and growth, we're faced with challenges in making sure people are ready to take the engineer, captain, and chief positions in the future. We're working real hard collaborating with our partners, Yavapai College, even working with Central Arizona Fire and the other departments in the area to kind of be on the same page as we move forward. And with that, we've done 4 promotional tests, 2 engineer tests, which we've just promoted 5 more engineers for a total of 6 this year, 1 captain's test, which promoted 3, and 1 battalion chief test, which promoted 2. My division, as you can see up here, is me and 1 9-month training captain on loan from the operations division, and then a shared admin between myself, the operations, and the office of the chief. The shift training officers you see up here that are 8, those are members of the department that dedicate their time mostly off duty to providing training to the region itself, not only to our department, but the region. We do a program called quarterly training. Every quarter is a different topic, and it's shared instructors with us and CAFMA with invitations to Groom Creek, Walker, and Williamson Valley, Baghdad, Mare Fire. So that's beneficial to us, much like the closest unit dispatch that we do. It's the same training that we get. So we're all on the same page. We have the same procedures, same terminology, same tactics, and provides the best service to the community. A couple major initiatives. I talked about the regional collaboration, not only with local departments in the college, but internally as well, through fleet and facilities, dispatch, IT, HR. Facility needs and maintenance, also the apparatus that we have. Data collection, through all these processes that we've been improving on over the years, it's been imperative of collecting all the data that we're doing, and that's what we've been pretty much focusing on the last year, so we can provide you the tools that you need. One note that I'd like to mention, if you look up here, total training hours by PFD employees, that's close to 30,000 hours of training hours that we've conducted, which equates to just under 40 hours per person per month. And then I already mentioned we're facing firefighter and recruitment training shortages, and we're coming up with innovative ways to do that. One item that Chief mentioned was the Explorer program, and we're getting into schools more and the colleges more and trying to recruit more there. With that, I'm going to pass it on, Chief.
All right, we'll round it out here. And Tyler, I may be 2 minutes over the 2:30 mark. Oh, that's all right. Okay, so as you saw, this is the first year of our data measurement that we initiated with the new strategic plan. And I want to just take a few seconds here, maybe a minute, to talk about results and meaning. Our databases are still evolving. We are focusing very, very intently on making sure that we have valid data. The data that we do report is valid, but in our program appraisals that I mentioned, those 16, there's still a lot of blanks, and we'd rather not have data manufactured, so to speak, and just put it somewhere Rather, we're identifying those areas and then doing a strategic assessment to see what kind of databases we do need to develop. We're right now in collaboration with a company called ImageTrend for our record management system upgrade, and we're also going to be integrating some of the community risk management databases that Chief Knapp mentioned into that record management system, and I'm hoping to see a lot of our data improve in terms of collection there. But the other real important thing is I also want to make sure that I'm transparent with all of you. There are areas that we're currently underperforming. We knew that. We now have numbers to put towards that. And really, what you see here is not an outcome. That's the big message that I want to make sure that we drive home here. Response times in and of themselves are just one component of a quality emergency response system. And so when you see, for instance, that 47% of our responses are currently within the effective response force benchmarks for our adopted standards of cover, while the goal is 90%, there are still good outcomes that we're here to report. We do need to continue to work on those. However, again, some context and some framing I think is very, very important, and we'll talk about a couple of more here. Now, one of the outcome measures here that's loosely represented is that 50% of the time we're able to contain a fire in a residential structure to the room of origin. And that is important in part because that's usually about the time that flashover occurs. And when flashover occurs, what happens is that normally the property loss increases significantly and life loss has the potential to decrease significantly at that point. So for us to intercede prior to that point is important, and there's a time curve that I'll talk about here in just a second that contributes to that. I mentioned at the beginning we have 7 major critical issues in our fire department that we're trying to address with the strategic plan. And today I want to highlight 2 of them. One is infrastructure and health and safety. We've talked about with all of you the need for remodels in addition to our new stations. And what you see here are pictures that were taken literally this week. Now, before we go into this, I also want to highlight our partnership with facilities. They do a tremendous job with the resources that they have. If we have safety issues that are urgent, they get right on it. So I want to make sure that I go public here that this is not saying that facilities is not doing their job. Quite the opposite is true. What you see here at the top left, that is workout equipment in our apparatus bays, which obviously are carcinogen and contaminant-laden areas. You see some of the ceiling conditions there, including some of the exhaust fumes that over time accumulate, storage issues in all of our stations. The bottom left is the front door of Station 73 as it sits today. That obviously is something we want to make sure that our public-facing image in the community improves over time. We have other infrastructure issues like you see on the brick, and those are deferred maintenance backlog issues that are not unique to the fire department. Again, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I think it's very important that we highlight those areas as we discuss these issues. How do we deal with that? Well, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of objective representation of the issue. And what you see there is a spreadsheet that we got through industry best practices. There's 3 areas with several things, including health and safety. Do our facilities have public reception areas, for instance? If somebody came in and said, hey, I'm having chest pain, do we have a place for them to sit down and have an evaluation? And a lot more. And another key part of this metric here is that in 2015, the department hired a professional facilities consulting firm to do a facility condition index, and those facility condition index are also in this spreadsheet. I'm happy to, of course, share that. And the interesting news there is that out of our 5 stations, technically, 4 of those are being asked to recommend it for replacement. Now, again, this is data. We need to be strategic and prioritize. But I want to highlight this just so you can understand really on a numeric level where we're at with our existing building stock. Chief Lucas mentioned this community growth issue. I think it's always important to highlight where we're at. Last fire station was added roughly in 1995, and since that time, population has increased by 57%, and our call volume has increased roughly 200%. And that, of course, has an impact on response times. Again,
figures that you've seen before, just a little bit more detail here. The top table comes directly out of our standards of cover that we are compliant with our accreditation standards. And the reason why I wanted to highlight that is because you can see a little bit of the difference between fire suppression and EMS. Fire suppression is a much lower data set. Therefore, the variability in that data is a lot more, more significant. The EMS data set, though, that you see up there is 25,809 responses over the course of 5 years. That's a data set that, for the size of our system, is a very reliable measure, and we're starting to see an increase to an 11.5-minute response time. You see a flash over demographic here. The same is true in cardiac arrest survival as well. So what are we doing about that? Well, in calendar year 24, we're definitely going to lean into 4 areas. Obviously, the infrastructure investment conversation that we've already started to talk with you about, again, to improve outcomes. Recruiting and retaining our workforce is going to be a continued issue. If we're successful in adding firefighters over the next few years, we need to find those firefighters somewhere. Central Arizona has just bought a piece of property at Glassford Hill and Santa Fe Loop Road for their next station, and they're awaiting their final approval for a certificate of need. And if you put those things together, including our attrition rate, we're going to be looking for a lot of firefighters here in central Yavapai County. Improving data collection and analysis is on our radar screen. We mentioned a couple of those things, but this is definitely going to be a heavy focus area. And then finally, of course, the funding for those crucial community needs. Really quickly, I want to highlight the presentation that we've already had in one-on-ones with you over the last couple of weeks. We know that geographic growth, service demand, and our increasing need to prioritize and mitigate low acuity call volumes is huge. We'll also quickly talk about a more realistic response time target. It's very important to me. And then finally, we talked already recruitment, retention, and competition for those scarce resources. A couple of planning factors for fire stations that are very important. The construction time frame is approximately 2 to 3 years from the time you sign a design contract to the time you open that station and a fire truck rolls out of it with staffed firefighters, because there's, of course, also recruitment timelines in there. The sustainable funding for that, it's not just the capital. You also need to increase your operating expenses. One fire station is anywhere between $1.6 and $1.8 million, depending on how you slice the benefit costs. Renovations, as I mentioned, are needed at the existing stations. So along with that, we also have to prioritize those in. And then continued coordination with CAFMA. We're actually going to bring you an updated intergovernmental agreement with CAFMA, and one of the appendices in there is to make sure that our capital investments are efficient. So in other words, we're not going to put a fire station within 5 feet of a CAFMA station and vice versa. So we're actually going to talk to each other and make sure that we distribute those stations as effectively as we possibly can. The current coverage that you see here is based off of our 4-minute travel time benchmark that is adopted in our standards of cover. That is also a 4-minute travel time that is loosely based on national standards. Now, one of the things that is significant, obviously, in Prescott for this fire department is topography. It is very difficult for us to respond to that 4-minute benchmark because we are not laid out on a grid system. If you go to Phoenix, that's a much different conversation. And so currently, Pinion Oaks, Prescott Lakes, Rosser, the airport, industrial sector, Granite Dells, portions of Copper Basin, Thumb Butte, and Walden Farms are outside our urban service levels. But what that means in terms of call volume density, I think, is also very instructive. When you look at the center of town, we see a lot more calls than we do on the outskirts. Again, not a surprising metric, but I wanted to see this so that we can prioritize the conversation about where we need new stations. And when you look at those areas that's north of Willow Lake Road, up towards the airport, of course, that is proportionally much more significant, including both areas inside the city limits and outside the city limits where we're first due. About 35% of those incidents currently occur in areas we're not able to cover in that 4-minute standard. We've proposed to you a couple of fire station locations, and real quickly, again, I just want to cover those. The Heights location, which is that property near Larry Caldwell and 89A. That's a relocation of Fire Station 73. Station 76 would be the new station on Rosser on city-owned land near the Adult Center. And as you can see, that addition has a significant impact on the coverage map that I showed you at the beginning of this presentation. This is right now a 3.5-minute improvement overall within city limits with those additional capital resources that I just mentioned. Finally, we've also discussed the urban service level redefinition. Because we are up for reaccreditation this year, we have to redo a document called our Standards of Cover. And our Standards of Cover is, in essence, our response guidance document. And in that we get the opportunity every 5 years to set those travel time benchmarks in collaboration with all of you. My recommendation that I've already made to some of you is that we adjust that by 1.5 minutes and continue to keep a close eye on outcomes, because I don't want to come in front of you as the fire chief saying I want to meet this 4-minute travel time standard when I know realistically that's something we're probably never going to be effectively able to achieve in a fiscally responsible manner. And so that would move that travel time standard to 5.5 minutes for the first arriving unit and 9.5 minute, again, travel time only for the effective response force. And that in essence covers our city with those capital investments that I just recommended. And there you can see the difference obviously is pretty significant, but important, apples, oranges, 4 minutes on left, 5.5 minutes on the right. So very important key factor. The immediate capital that would be needed to make that happen is roughly $32 million. And that is a recommendation that I've made to all of you, is that we build these capital resources, if possible, on one construction contract, on one design contract, because we know we need those resources now, and the escalation of capital construction is significant. 6 to 8% a year is what most industry professionals are telling us. And so we want to get ahead of that because we know we need these capital resources yesterday, technically. And of course, we also want to continue to push ahead on innovations like low acuity call diversion, the move-up module, and also better station alerting to reduce the total response time that it takes for us to get on scene. The last need that I really want to highlight to all of you is the training tower. The reason why you don't see the training tower on the right side in this picture is because we don't have one anymore. This year we had to actually demolish that training tower, which was more than 40 years old, because it was actually condemned. We couldn't safely train in it anymore. And so at this point, we've filed a congressionally directed spending application, or we're in the process of, to have that training tower rebuilt. But it's also, of course, that doesn't come through, we will need that. Location's, of course, not ideal. The training facility itself is undersized, and in the long term, we're recommending a relocation of that training center in a partnership with police and other public safety agencies around the region in order for us to have that in a much more sustainable location. We've talked about the health and safety retrofits already and the renovations of the existing stations, and on the far horizon, but still in our planning window, is new Fire Station 77. As I mentioned, the reason why we don't have that in our proposal currently is because I don't know where to put it without putting it in the wrong place when growth happens in 5 to 10 years in patterns we don't yet know. Very likely it will be north of the airport based on what initial planning trends are telling us. But until that happens and we have a little bit more information, and of course the need, we don't want to make that placement decision at this time. So that concludes our presentation, a little 6 minutes over. But I hope at this point for both police and fire, we'll take your questions.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. First, let me say thank you. That was a wide depth and deep breadth of information. I'm a little bit overwhelmed, but I think I kept up with a lot of it. And one of the things that seems very evident to me and to you, to probably all of you as a leadership team, is that you are doing a lot with a little. And I think in my assessment, that has been true of police and fire for a while, certainly before I got here and probably before any of us were on council. And when I'm looking at what you guys are identifying as capital needs, I'm doing the math, and as Councilman Gambogi says, you can check my math, I guess, but I'm coming up with about $50 million in capital costs. And I think what also occurs to me is that with those capital costs, we're not just merely talking about a one and done type situation. You add a fire station and you quoted a number, Chief, of $1 to $2 million in ongoing annual costs as well. I imagine there's similar ongoing costs that get added when you add infrastructure to the police department as well. And I also am thinking of the fact that you tied in the fact that elected officials are part of your support team and the support team that supports all of the first responders in our community. And I guess what seems clear to me is that for too long, we as a community have asked you folks to do a lot with not enough. And I, for one, think, Mayor, that it's time that we look seriously at revenue options to provide our police and fire with additional means. And I know that doing so, as was noted during our last finance meeting, would require approval from the voters. But I think as a body, we should certainly look at taking on that information from staff as soon as possible so that we might be able to get in front of these what I have heard over and over again are immediate capital needs.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I've lived in this community a long time, and this has, as you know, been a concern of mine, having been in the fire department family for so long myself. It's amazing what the data will reveal, and thank you for that. I have to say, in all the years I've been involved in the city, I've never seen such a complete, professional report, something we should have in 2024. So thank you for that. Just for some of the audience that is just kind of assembled here, I just kind of want to go back through this real quick. 44,619 calls performed by 57 officers in the police department. These are the takeaways. The fire department providing 368 distinct services, 11,777 incidents responded to. You've protected 50,368 air passengers. We have not built a station since 1995 with a 199% increase in calls. And I'm of the same mind as Councilman Montoya, and I'm sure everybody else here. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance here to make some comments. But for myself, I think at the end of the day, I'd like to direct the staff to start immediately a study session on how we can get you funded. It's important. It's time. We've let it go too long, and we really need to attack this. So with that, I'm directing the staff, and I hope everybody can get on board with that. Again, thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Councilman Gambogi.
Over the weekend, I did my homework, put a bunch of tabs on the presentations to ask questions, but in the essence of time, I won't ask those questions. What I would say is, speaking on behalf of the community, both the fire and the police department have been turning miracles. And to support what Councilman Montoya was saying, we've been driving a car, we haven't been changing the oil, and we haven't been changing the air filter. We need our maintenance for the police and fire is way overdue. So I think in the future you're going to see some efforts on that behalf, and I hope the community supports them. Thank you.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. This has been a very eye-opening presentation, and I'm glad that we're doing it now. It's important that we react now and start working on our public safety. I was looking at the packet, and the words playing catch up were repeated over and over, and that's what we're doing. We're playing catch up. And if we don't do something now, the problem is just going to get worse. So I'm just asking the public, please don't kill the messenger. This council is trying to solve problems along with the police and fire department for a situation that's been in the making for a long term. Thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to, number one, just agree with all the statements that have been made by the other council members. As I've been studying this issue and as we've met, I've kind of equated this situation that we're facing with public safety to the PSPRS situation that we faced several years ago. It was a problem that accrued over many, many years. And unfortunately, previous councils, when that PRS debt got to 20 million, they didn't do anything. Then 30, then 40, then 50, then 60, and 70. And finally, when it's $80 million, we did something. It kept getting kicked down the road. And I think the same thing has happened here with police stations and fire stations. This has just been kicked down the road by previous councils. And this council has your back. And we're supportive of these requests for capital funds as well as ongoing expenditures. And we hope to rally the community behind you and get the financial support that you need to correct these deficiencies now.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Fully agree with everything my fellow council mates up here have said. You guys are absolutely beloved in the community. We hear it and we see it all the time. And we are long overdue in supporting you back, not only the council supporting you back, but also the community. I was very encouraged with the community survey that we did. And that should give all of us great confidence that this is our first and foremost mission, is to provide public safety and infrastructure, and this is the one we've kicked the longest down the road. So we will be addressing it with a sense of urgency, and I do count on the community to be behind us on this.
Well, I'll add my comments to the other council members here. In the private sector, we're always asked to do more with less. And we've been asking our public safety departments to do more with less far too long. When we look at the statistics of our growth in our population and the expansion of our borders and the ability for us to be able to respond in a prompt manner so that every one of our citizens can be assured that they have equal access to public safety, we're not meeting that need. I think it's important that we realize that, yes, we want to have a smaller government with minimal but essential regulations and also low taxes. But that doesn't mean no taxes. We still showed that we were able to raise a substantial amount of revenue to fill the huge gap in our PSPRS pensions. And we were able to retire that tax 50% faster than we even anticipated. So even with that tax, we were still the lowest taxed community in the Quad Cities, which means that we do have some revenue areas that we could utilize to deal with this essential problem. As far as I'm concerned, the most essential reason to have government is for public safety. Yes, we have other demands in the area with water and contamination, airport, and some other issues. Those should be manageable, but we have to establish where our priorities are. And our priorities have to be with public safety. We don't want to have people expire because they're waiting too long for a response for either the police or the fire department. We have to make sure that everyone in the community has that expectation that they're going to get service by public safety in a prompt manner so that their lives are not at risk. I think, again, I'll mention the fact that the community safety results we saw shows that the community at large wants this to happen. So I'm always of the principle of keeping smaller government and low taxes, but it's time for us to move forward with this. We need capital, we need new fire stations, and we need an ongoing revenue stream to make sure that we have the staff and the benefits that go to that staff to make sure that ongoing equal protection of the law is available to everyone. So with that said, I think you're going to see this council advocate for either a broad combined new revenue source through taxation, or in my opinion, maybe a combined two-tiered agreement where we can look at the capital needs, get those fire stations built, and then we can retire that part of the tax. But then we have a second one that will maintain an ongoing revenue stream for hiring, training, maintaining, and making sure that those new stations are properly staffed for the long run. So with that said, we've got a couple of minutes here before our 3 o'clock meeting starts. I'll adjourn this meeting, and then
Mayor.
we'll start again.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You do have public comment on this item.
How many?
Just one.
I think we can make an exception for one.
Sherry Hannah. And if one of you could let her use your mic, that'd be great. Thanks.
Stand here. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Sherry Hannah, and I'm a longtime resident of Prescott and a longtime supporter of our Prescott Police and Fire Departments. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of public safety in Prescott. Well, we live in a different world, a more volatile world, and Prescott is not exempt from what is happening in other cities such as ours. Due to the actions of some, our police officers nationwide have been disparaged and defunded, resulting in their profession suffering great and unwarranted damage. We must be able to hire police officers and firefighters to meet the population needs. We all know that our police department is competing with other departments that offer incentives to lure them where they need to their departments. So our departments must be able to compete with those other departments to hire good and quality police officers. I'm very grateful to live in a community where the majority of the population supports law and order. However, there are those that do not respect the law, making law enforcement and firefighting a very dangerous but much needed service. We are also entering our fire season, which we all know can be a very dangerous time for our first responders and our community. It is important that the public safety and the safety of our police officers and firefighters remain paramount. In addition, safety was the #1 concern of residents in that recent survey that you mentioned. Because of our current and future growth, Prescott is not a small town anymore. We are a metropolitan area. And it is our fire and police and fire departments need to be able to keep up with the service calls and with proper number of personnel and resources to ensure the safety of Prescott. So, as it seems like you've all come to an agreement and a consensus, I urge you to quickly unite in this effort as a council, to work with Chief Bonney and Chief DeRay to come to a timely solution that will continue to provide resources, personnel, and infrastructure to our police and fire that will help keep the people of Prescott as well as our police and firefighters safe. Thank you.
That's all, Mayor. And just for everybody in the audience, we'll be adjourning the study session in just a few minutes. I recognize that probably a lot of you are here for the very last item that is on the voting session agenda. I'm going to be having staff come in just a minute to kind of help organize some things, but I would appreciate, we have a lot of items to get to before that item. We have some people that are here for presentations and recognition for employees, so we'd greatly appreciate your help in allowing the people that are here for the first items to come forward so that we can get this taken care of in an organized fashion and allow us to reorganize all of this right here as well. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to need about 15 minutes to make this changeover. So right now it's 2:51. We'll reconvene at 3:10. This meeting is adjourned.